Have you been told you need to stop doing what you love, whether it's exercise, running, or a sport? Well, here at Dynamic, we don't like that answer. In this podcast, we'll talk to leaders in the health and wellness space from Southwest Florida to get the solutions you need to get you back to doing what you love. Welcome to the Dynamic Naples Podcast. Okay. Johnny Barefoot, how you doing?
Is that where we're starting?
Oh, yeah.
So I was looking at my own feet today.
Mm-hmm.
Well, really every day because I'm barefoot all the time now. And it's because of you. You're a bad influence.
I inspired you?
You definitely inspired me.
Good.
And what I noticed was my feet are getting wider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The pad on the outside of my foot, it's like literally growing.
That the metatarsal there, the bone?
Yeah.
Or like the skin around the bone, basically. Is what's growing. Yeah.
Yeah, the skin around the bone is it's just like a really large callus.
Yeah. That's Wolf's Law.
Wolf's Law.
Yeah.
And for context, we're talking about why you should be barefoot.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been barefoot now every single day, all day. So however long a day is, 16 hours. I'm walking around barefoot for maybe like a total 8 hours, 9 hours on my feet.
Uh-huh.
And, my feet are changing. So one of the big things is just like the pad on the foot is just getting thicker and thicker. When I first started being barefoot all day, like we have hard ground here in the gym, my feet were really sensitive because I just didn't have much skin there. There's not really much of a layer. And now they've just built up this layer of hard skin. And when I touch the bottom of my feet, they're all like thick and rugged, like a man.
The way they're supposed to be, right? It's like a guitar player who develops calluses on their fingertips. Mm-hmm. That's what Wolf's Law is. But I do want to, you kind of brought up an interesting point, though, the sensation. I wonder if the callus would probably decrease sensation. Is that probably what our normal should be, like if you think about it from an ancestral perspective? Or, to ask that a different way, do shoes oversensitize feet, right? Because we've mentioned this before, there's studies where people that wear a cushioned shoe tend to hit the ground harder because the foot's trying to find, it seems like the foot is trying to get sensation. So I wonder if in that thinking, maybe the nerve endings sort of oversensitize when they're in shoes.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting argument. Let's go back to...
It's pure speculation.
Yeah, let's go back to like why we decided to be barefoot. Because you're barefoot all day, pretty much.
Yep.
Are you on your feet a lot during the day? Like how many hours do you think?
The majority of my day I'm on my feet.
Okay.
I'm on, in front of my computer just, I basically see patients for an hour. About 55 minutes of that, I'm doing some treatment, so I'm standing for most of that. Then maybe 5 minutes to type up a note. So majority of my day is standing.
And then how long have you been primarily barefoot? Like when did you start to make that transition?
Well, I guess when I went full-time into my own job. So whenever COVID hit is basically when I went full-time. It's been a couple of years now.
Okay. When you were training at the other gym, though, North Collar, you weren't really barefoot as much. Like when were you able to like go just like flip-flops and how you do now?
Well, back when I was at the North Collar gym, I was also at the Fit Lab where I was barefoot. And then when I left the Collier gym, that's when I went 100%.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, have you noticed... so let's just talk about why you decided to. Like, what was the impetus for you to be barefoot all the time?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I just love being barefoot and I hate bending over and putting on shoes. I don't like there's a claustrophobic feeling that shoes give me and like the stink. I don't like socks. I hate socks. Mm-hmm. So it started off as kind of a preference thing. And of course I know there's a lot of benefit to it too. So, and then I also demonstrate so much stuff on my feet to my patients. I talk about feet a lot and show like foot position, arch position, things like that. That was constantly taking my shoes off. And then I changed to like basically a clog, something I could slip on, slip off easily for demonstration purposes for my patients. Then one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wear flip-flops to work and walk around barefoot because I'm constantly taking my shoes off anyways. That was the starting point.
Yeah, for me, what had happened was I didn't really think much about shoes up until I started my personal training company. So maybe like two years ago and some change, 2.5 years ago now, and I wrote a blog on shoes. I wrote like a whole history of shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, so I teach people how to run, and I was thinking about shoes with really big heels in them and why that's not good for you. So I started thinking about, well, my shoes should be flat. So I had one pair of, like flat 0 drop shoes. So drop is the distance between the heel and the forefoot, like how high the heel
angle
is versus the forefoot. Most shoes have like a 13 millimeter or more drop. A low drop shoe is considered 8 millimeters, and then 0 drop is obviously completely flat all the way across from heel to toe. But your foot doesn't have any drop. So why should your shoe have drop was kind of my what I did the research on. Turns out that the reason shoes have drop was back in the 70s, orthopedic surgeons, podiatrists, wanted to fix overpronation of the foot when people ran. So they gave people arch support and high-heeled shoes and then flexible forefoots to try to combat the pronation thing that they saw happening. What they did, technically speaking, fixes pronation, but then it causes more pronation because it's like giving your body the support it should be creating itself. And so that's how we got to where we are with shoes. But we can do like a whole history of shoes maybe another day, or maybe we've done it already. And so that's when I started. Like once I did that blog, it was a really fun blog to write. I actually have it. We have it posted on the dynamicnaples.com. So you can check that out in our blogs. There's the shoe blog. So once I wrote that, I was like, okay, I should definitely be wearing 0 drop shoes. And so I had one pair of 0 drop shoes. It was a Nike Metcon variation. And so I just started wearing those all the time. And then at some point, I was like starting to recommend shoes to my clients because I realized their shoes were just causing so much bad movement that I was seeing. And so I did more research on like what shoes have 0 drop that are will also give them a good awareness of the ground. So I found Vivo Barefoot. Mm-hmm. I bought a pair of Vivo Barefoots, and if you haven't checked it out, go to vivobarefoot.com. They're really minimalist shoes. They're just
V-E-V-O, right?
V-I-V-O.
V-I-V-O, okay.
And they're pretty much like just a shoe with some cloth at the top and like a very thin rubber sole that's highly flexible. Like you can just roll the thing up into a ball. Mm-hmm. So I bought a pair of those. I noticed immediately how much more of the ground I could feel. Like I would walk over the rocks on like a planter or something like that, like going into the grocery store, and I could just feel every little rock underneath my foot.
You could use your feet.
Could use my feet. And I gained so much awareness of my body position. I was like, oh, these are really cool. But the nice little rubber thing like protected my foot from like getting cut up. So I was like, this is nice. This is maybe the right transition. So I wore those for a year and a half, and I was wearing those here for two months, however long I've been barefoot, maybe like a month and a half. And I sit down on our couch here to just like read. Mm-hmm. I don't like to just put my feet up on the couch with shoes on, so I was just I'd take my shoes off, kick my feet up. My feet smelled so bad. Yeah. Because my shoes are like a year and a half old.
That's our couch, John.
What's that?
On our couch?
I know. I know. I stopped. I did this on purpose, the whole barefoot thing, just for our couch. That was the only reason.
I appreciate it.
But yeah, my feet smelled so bad. I was like, man, this sucks. I was like, well, I'm almost all the way there to barefoot. Like, what if I just try barefoot for like a week and then just see how it goes, see if my feet smell less? And so I just started being barefoot, and I haven't turned back.
Good.
Because I had smelly-ass feet. And my feet don't smell anymore.
Good. Solved a bunch of problems. We should probably go into some of the orthopedics of why we should. I don't want to be too dogmatic about this. I mean, I don't think there's necessarily...
Be dogmatic,
No,
brother.
I mean, if you want to wear shoes, but just know that it might cause some issues.
No,
and if
nobody should ever be wearing shoes. Ever.
I mean, shoes are
not
good
even
for
to
glass. They're good for cigarette butts and things like that. That's what they're good for in my mind. But, I'm also not a runner, so I can't really speak to barefoot running. I know there's a big movement towards that, but I imagine some people just need shoes to run, I'm guessing. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really make sense from an ancestral point of view. Right?
I think short distances, you can be barefoot. I think long distances, you should probably put something, because you just don't know what you're going to run over.
Right.
And you probably don't have the calluses on the feet to really protect them.
So you said something earlier, too, the pronation thing. These docs and orthopedic surgeons, not surgeons, podiatrists want to fix overpronation. So do we even think overpronation is a problem?
I would say in acute situations, like let's say you're doing a squat and you're lifting really heavy and your foot collapses a little bit, as long as you're normally in good position, so I would say that's okay. A little bit of pronation. I do this external rotation drill with a band above the knee where I have my clients purposely go into internal rotation at the hip and, obviously valgus at the knee, and then they go into pronation at the foot. And I want them to use their whole foot to roll over onto the arch and then roll to the outside of the foot. So I don't think pronation, given the right circumstances, is a bad thing. I think chronic overused pronation when you're running or doing lower body movements and you can't control it is a problem.
Yeah, I think it's a problem when it's a problem. You know what I mean? So I think we get really stuck on like posture and this foot position and arch and technically you could have a flat foot and be fine. There's a lot of people who have flat feet and never have a problem. But what we do know is the further you get away from whatever ideal is, the greater likelihood something's going to arise. Yeah. That's what I would say. So. Lower pronation is the only problem. If you're a big-time runner, you're doing marathons, and it starts to give you plantar fasciitis, okay, now it's a problem. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I definitely agree there. And I think I think those high heel shoes are a problem because you just never end up supporting your foot, and it encourages you to run on the heel. But, again, running in your foot is definitely a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I want to just reiterate that point. Basically, most shoes that have a drop, so in other words, that the heel is elevated, you're basically wearing high heels.
Yeah.
Most shoes are high heels. So okay. Some of the problems that creates, you're going to be in a plantar flexed position more often, and we know the body adapts to whatever position you put it in over time. So you're going to naturally develop stiffness in the calf and the ankle, and you're going to be missing some dorsiflexion, the opposite motion. And if you like to squat, or even get out of a chair, it's going to change your mechanics.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about pronation now. Let's talk about adduction, abduction of the toes.
Okay.
And then like bunions. So obviously if you look at most shoes, they come to a point. Is that or is that not how shoes should be?
Should not be. The widest part of your foot should be your toes. I mean, if you just look at your baby pictures, your baby footprint, your widest part is your toes. And then shoe wear over time makes your toes get kind of rammed together and kind of get that pointed look.
Yeah, and this is actually something that happened to me, and it's still unfortunately the case, where I have just my toes are all scrunched together, and I have literally no function of my big toe. Yeah. I can't extend it and flex it independent of the other toes. It's almost like I trapped my hand in a mitten my whole life, and then I took the mitten off, and then all of a sudden, like you're trying to move your fingers around, but they've never moved around. So I'm trying to fix that, and it's really hard.
Like an all-inclusive mitten. So it's not even like, because a mitten has a thumb opposed, like not attached, right?
Yeah, no, it would be even worse if it was like everything. If you just duct tape my hand together my whole life and then put a sock over it, that's like what my feet are like right now. And you can see it at my toes, like they all come to a point where if I stretch my big toe out and get it wide, you could like my whole foot looks different. It looks like a different foot on a different person.
Yeah, this is why I obsess about toes. You're supposed to use them first of all. I think people think toes are like an afterthought, but they're basically supposed to be like our fingers. Like I tell my patients, use your toes. Like walk around, pick stuff up with your toes, and like actually gain some function of them. By the way, one of the main causes of bunions is what you're talking about. The big toe starts to ram in towards the second toe, and so the joint just kind of sticks out a little bit. And then over time, it starts to Wilslaw again. It starts to like get some friction from the shoe you're wearing, and then it starts laying down some tissue. I also think there's a different thing that happens too, where if you're stiff in dorsiflexion, then your foot tends to turn out. Actually, I learned in grad school, 7 degrees of foot turnout is normal. Well, I think they mean normal as in normative. I don't think that should be the way we're walking.
It's just like there's the Newman Kinesiology book, which is a fantastic biomechanics book. They talk about running on your heels as if that's how you're. Then they talk about the biomechanics of running on your heels, and that's the whole chapter about running.
Heel striking.
Yeah, but again, normative versus normal. Should we be running on our heels? They wrote a whole book because that's the way most people run, even though they shouldn't be. But anyway,
it's like the middle of a bell curve, that kind of normal. So basically, that knuckle basically becomes your pivot point. Instead of toeing off with your big toe, you toe off with that knuckle.
Yeah,
I think that also starts to lay down some tissue.
Yeah, and so we could discuss that with me because I have the first sort of presence of a bunion. Unfortunately, I have spent enough time in my Vivo barefoot shoes, and now I spend enough time barefoot. Now I'm probably stopping it from continuing on, because even if you look at my Vivo, it's like the big toe is just like really worn down, and not the edge of that. What joint is that? The metatarsal?
Yeah, metatarsal.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I'm preventing that, but I'll talk about a couple of clients I have here, one of which has a hard time doing lunges because she has a bunion, and the pressure on her bunion hurts too bad. She can't even she can't even put pressure on her big toe,
right?
Because her bunion's in the way, and her big toe is so out of the way because it's so adducted over to the second toe. Then I have another client whose left toe has a giant bunion, her left foot. Her right foot doesn't have a bunion at all. Like her foot's normal. And what you see is her left glute has a whole bunch of problems. She has sciatica. She has lower back pain there. Her right side, totally normal. Like totally well-functioning, no pain.
Wait, which side is the bunion on?
On the left side.
And the glute is messed up on that side?
Yep.
All right, got it.
So now you're talking about this whole chain of reaction.
Yeah.
Of not just the shoe wear that she's had, but weakness on that side, which who knows, that a whole host of things could be causing that. But yeah, you're talking about, shoe wear matters, but also movement matters too when it comes to preventing these things.
Yeah, I also want to bring up that this is the main mechanism for plantar fasciitis too. So this is a really interesting topic. I think we did a podcast on this in the past, right? So going back to that pointed, that's called toe box, right? When the toe box is kind of narrow like that, the big toe starts to sort of ride the second toe, and there's a muscle that is responsible for that motion, so it gets stiff over time because of that position. Underneath that muscle is an artery that supplies the plantar fascia. So they've done studies where they just take someone's big toe and manually adduct or move it over, and there's an immediate 60% reduction in blood flow just from that position. So if you're chronically in that position, you're chronically cutting off your blood supply to your fascia. And there's a histologist that did a study on this. Took a whole...
Man, I love histology.
Histology. Hist. Anyways, so he was looking for itis, inflammation. Right? It's called fasciitis. Everyone assumes that the fascia is inflamed. Didn't find any kind of inflammation in the fascia. He found necrosis, which is tissue death. So theoretically, the muscle's cutting off the blood supply, and now the plantar fascia is dying and the foot's destabilizing. That's what's causing the plantar fasciitis.
Can being barefoot fix that?
I think so over time. It's funny because you talk to most podiatrists, they'll say, last thing you want to do is be barefoot. And maybe that makes sense in the acute phase, but I think that is the long-term solution. I mean, my dad had plantar fasciitis, and he's afraid. He walks around in shoes all the time, even in his house.
Yeah, and I think the concern there is you're just putting your foot into plantar flexion all the time because you're wearing a shoe that has heels on it, and that plantar fascia is just never getting any opportunity to stretch out. On top of the fact that you're trapping that big toe into adduction and all the other things that go into just wearing a shoe all the time, I think not accessing more dorsiflexion is also a problem for people with
absolutely
plantar fasciitis.
So I think this is something that happens a lot in healthcare where something hurts and you're told to stop doing that, which I don't really like that. So I know if you do a big transition, your foot too rapid or any part of the body, it's not going to feel good. So if you go coming out of a heels, basically high heels, and your foot's really stiff in that position, and you go to barefoot, that might be too drastic of a change too fast. So that creates pain in a lot of people, and I'm sure podiatrists will hear that, I was barefoot and it killed me. Okay, well, don't do that. I think that's where that sentiment comes from, but I think it's a little bit erroneous. I think people should transition lower to eventually being barefoot. Yeah,
so let's quickly sum up why we think being barefoot is better for most people most of the time, and then we can walk through the transition to being barefoot, because I definitely think there is a transition. I didn't just jump into being barefoot. I've been wearing Vivos forever. So being barefoot, it's going to provide the foot the support it actually needs, which is from itself. When you walk around barefoot, if you have really flat feet, I used to have really flat feet. What you'll notice is you actually get more of an arch just from being barefoot because your muscles, the intrinsic muscles of the foot, actually have to do their job.
Yep.
You won't be trapping your foot into that position with that tight toe box, so hopefully allowing the toes to splay out a little more, although I do think it's not quite as simple as that. I do think you need more. I do think you need like toe space, stuff like that, to really fix that long term. Mm-hmm. You'll gain more calluses at the bottom of your foot, so they'll have less sensitization to pain, and you'll be able to like walk over harder surfaces like rocks and stuff better. Am I missing anything so far? We'll also be able to decrease possibly the chances of plantar fasciitis long term. Did I cover all the bases we just chatted about?
I mean, in short, you're basically saying it just creates a more natural position of your foot, right?
Yeah, I would say that's a really great summation of the summation.
Yeah. So two things I want to cover. What I do look for in a shoe, and also the point I was making earlier about when you wear a cushion shoe, your body's like looking for sensation. So I wonder, and again, this is speculation, is this sort of epidemic of heel strike running from shoe wear because the heel is so hard? You're just laying on the heel to find more input from the ground. I don't know.
I have no doubt that the shoe wear is causing the bad running posture because try to run barefoot on your heel. You're going to have to go to the dentist afterwards. But the other maybe benefit that I missed was you're going to put less force into the ground, or at least less through your joints if you're barefoot more often, because you simply don't have to overcome the force of a cushion in a shoe like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about that is you don't think it matters because each step is just a small step. But if you take 10,000 steps a day, 15,000 steps a day, that little extra force, 15,000 times accumulates to your knees, into your hips, into your ankles. So if you can constantly put less force into the ground, but could travel the same distance, over time you're probably going to see a lot of benefits from that for your knees and your hips.
I agree. Okay, I got to wrap this up soon because I got to go. But I do want to talk about the three things that I look for in a shoe. So the heel to toe, the heel drop, basically. I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, so zero drop shoes.
Zero drop shoes. I look at the toe box. Is it narrow or is it more like a natural one? So if you have like a wider toe box, that's going to be better. And then I look for toe spring. So if you put the shoe on a table and look at it, can you slide your fingertips underneath the front end? If the answer is yes, that's a toe spring. That's also something I try to stay away from.
Yeah.
You want it to lay flat.
So nice and flat all the way across. Good shoes to get if you're looking for a shoe like with those recommendations. Vivo Barefoots, which is an extreme case, and we'll talk about sort of the progression. And then Ultras, A-L-T-R-A, ultrarunning.com. You can find their shoes there. They actually look really nice. So let's go about the progression from like the shoes you're wearing now to barefoot, and then we'll wrap it up. Your first step should be going from a higher heel shoe to zero drop. So going from like an A6 type shoe to a Ultra. From Ultra, then you go to Vivo, and then once you're feeling good in the Vivo, then you go barefoot. And then you might have to do a little bit of Vivo, a little bit of barefoot, then you can be barefoot all the time.
Yeah, maybe spend like the weekends barefoot in your house or whatever.
Yeah, and I went from Vivo to full barefoot, and my feet were super sore at the end of each day. But within a week, they stopped doing it. They got stronger, and they can handle it now.
Are your feet sore at all anymore?
Well, yesterday I was on my feet for like probably 10 or 12 hours, so they were pretty sore after that, but they would be sore in a shoe. Like my legs would be sore in a shoe. So, but other than that, no, they feel great all the time.
Okay, I think we nailed it. Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Try to be barefoot more, and when it's a little uncomfortable and your feet are tired, just suck it up, Buttercup.
All right, bye, John.
Okay, bye.
Do you have unexplained pain, or do you wonder just how healthy you are? When was the last time you had your blood tested? Blood chemistry analysis is a great way to stay ahead of any health conditions, and now you can have control of your health with Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an incredible company that sends blood tests to your home. You can choose from over 30 different tests, whether that's liver function, testosterone, micronutrient, cholesterol, or C-reactive protein, which is a marker for inflammation. It's sent to you with free shipping, and you get your results in 2 to 5 days, no physician referral needed. Use the code DPT30 for 30% off. Go to letsgetchecked.com and use the code DPT30. Did you know that you can get started with physical therapy without a physician's referral? Physical therapists don't just solve pain, we get down to the root cause and keep it from coming back. We also discuss all things health, such as nutrition and lifestyle changes. If you feel that you could use some help, let's get on a free consult call. Go to www.dynamicnaples.com and sign up for a free call. Also, if you like this podcast, please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us spread the message. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.